CSW67 panel discussion, Protecting Women Human Rights Defenders for Sustainable Peace. I'm JWF and representative of the Journalists and Writers Foundation. We are an international civil society organization dedicated to the culture of peace, human rights, and sustainable development. JWF is also affiliated with the UN Department of Global Communications. UN advocacy for women's rights, working on innovative policy suggestions, civil society inputs to various UN agencies on the gender-sensitive implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals are among the priority areas of the JWF. We organize year-long training sessions for women delegations of human rights advocates and youth groups across the world to set a bridge between the successful civil society contributions and different intergovernmental platforms. So this event today that you kindly attended is one of the other 12 panel discussions that we organize in partnership with 13 civil society organizations from USA, UK, Romania, Greece, Brazil, India, Germany, and Kyrgyzstan on variety of topics in regards to gender mainstreaming of sustainable development. So before I move on with the panel, we have a short introduction video for today, so let's watch that to continue this session.
During the 67th session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women, the Journalists and Writers Foundation is organizing an in-person parallel event on protecting women human rights defenders for sustainable peace at the Church Center for the United Nations in New York on March 7, 2023. Women human rights defenders are at the forefront of facing life-threatening violations as they promote and protect just and cohesive societies and advance human rights for all. This event will showcase cases from different countries on the harmful, patriarchal, and anti-gendered narratives and provide policy suggestions to combat various forms of state-led harassment and arbitrary detention against women human rights defenders. Prestigious speakers will discuss the meaningful participation of women human rights defenders in building and maintaining sustainable peace and development worldwide. Join us in this interactive event to empower women human rights defenders, support women's rights as human rights, and celebrate women in your life and everywhere.
Before we dive into today's discussion, I just want to share my solidarity with Turkey and Syria as they were severely hit by a series of devastating earthquakes on February 6, almost a month ago. And many others indeed followed with high magnitude. So the death toll in Turkey passed over 45,000, leaving hundreds of thousands displaced and injured. We will continue to mobilize and carry on our humanitarian assistance and keep all those in our prayers, thoughts who lost their lives or loved ones in this tragic incident. So in our agenda today, we have the protection and empowerment of women human rights defenders for sustainable peace and development. Very important to me, Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders, Ms. Mary Lovrov, also underlines that human rights defenders are not only civil society members, intergovernmental organizations, but might also refer to political officials or from private sector, as we will hear shortly from our panelists. Regardless, though, in every case, women human rights defenders combat intersectional violence on many different grounds, especially with the rise of authoritarianism, one-man regimes, patriarchal societies across the globe. We see a drastic increase of cyber attacks on journalists, defamation campaigns against women politicians, legal harassment, and physical violence of all forms, as Iranian Afghan women human rights defenders are facing. Since the military unleashed a brutal crackdown, women of Myanmar are also subject to grave violations, as gender-based violence is systematically deep in Myanmar as well. As a human rights advocate, of course, we will hear more in depth from Afghanistan, Iran, and Myanmar, but I have a particular focus on monitoring and reporting on civil and political rights violations taking in Turkey And being a competitive authoritarian regime with judicial bodies under the control of pro-government officials, jailing women human rights defenders, politicians, journalists have been among the most embraced strategies of these states, like we will hear from different country cases as well. Many Kurdish women politicians in Turkey are deprived of their liberty. Like I said to Luke, now she is free, thankfully, but her severe health condition was oversighted for many years in jail, like the case of countless others. Or one another example, Şebnem Korur Fincancı, a world-renowned, globally known international forensic expert, was jailed. So I wanted to underline that incarceration of women human rights defenders with alleged accusations are among the mostly used strategies of such states as well. Moving on, now we will hear from our panelists today and talk about the role that women human rights defenders play in these regions, shedding light on their policy suggestions and, of course, organizational best practices to empower women human rights defenders. So, Azra, I would like to start with you. Today, indeed, marks 534th. It now became the day since all girls living in Afghanistan are banned from schools. Recently, women are banned from going to universities as well. And they are deprived of their right to access quality education, besides all the other civil and political rights. Mass killings of Hazara women and girls in the schools as a result of armed attacks took place. Many women human rights defenders were executed since August 2021. But despite all these life-threatening situations, women literally being washed away from civil society and political arenas, they are combating fearlessly with Afghans, Taliban's armed forces. And it would be great if you could please present us a status quo from Afghanistan. And for our audience to know you better, maybe as we go to the lectern, Azra Jafari is Afghanistan's first female mayor. And began her work as a human rights and social activist at the age of 17, where she established a non-profit school for Afghan refugees living in Iran. Her school taught more than 8,000 students that graduated and continued their education in universities across the globe. And throughout her career, Azra held many impactful positions in various councils and made history by becoming Afghanistan's first female mayor in Nili. So today, Azra continues to support and is an advocate for women, Afghan refugees, and Hazara communities across the globe. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Dear distinguished members, colleagues, diplomats of United Nations, and all participants, I am Azra Jafari, the first female mayor in Afghanistan. Today, I am here to raise my voice for the women of Afghanistan who are suffering under the Taliban regime. As a woman who was once a refugee and then returned to her country, hoping to rebuild it, I never imagined that I would again be forced to flee my homeland with my daughter and hundreds of thousands of others. The situation in Afghanistan under the regime of Taliban is dire. As per the UNDP report in November 2022, 97% or around 40 million in Afghanistan are below the poverty line and need emergency assistance for food and first aid. But despite all these challenges, the Taliban has focused on restricting women's rights. Since August 2021, the Taliban has issued 54 decrees, verbally or officially, almost 40 of them being restrictive for women. These decrees include banning school for girls in the 6th grade and up, banning all universities, private schools and institutes for girls, and restricting women's work in all profit or non-profit organizations. The Taliban has also banned women from exercising their right to governance, education, travel, public places such as parks, streets, even shopping malls. And the women who disobey these restrictions face punishment according to Sharia law, and a decree announced by Mullah Haibatullah Akhundzadeh on November 14, 2002, the supreme leader of the Taliban, which allows for public execution. According to a report by the media, 454 people, including 79 women, were publicly flagged in 21 provinces for not adhering to the proper hijab, running away from home, committing adultery, and selling drugs, or among other reasons. In addition, women in Afghanistan have paid a high price for their resistance against the Taliban regime. Over 162 women were killed in 23 provinces due to direct fire by the Taliban forces or unknown armed individuals. Yet, none of these cases have been investigated. Furthermore, 1,126 women and girls have been imprisoned in Taliban detention center across 24 provinces in Afghanistan. There are more, but the numbers only include reported accounts. Over 95% of these women participated in protests or write against the Taliban decision on the social media. Alia Azizi is a policewoman who the Taliban kidnapped in October 2021. I would like to repeat it. On October 2021. To this day, her whereabouts are unknown. Also, all these imprisoned women were killed, including Fruzan Safi, an avid protester. Afghanistan became a graveyard for the women, girls, and youth, also for Hazara, Sikh, Hindu, and all religious minorities. Forced marrying, child marrying, and suicide increase day by day, and we lose our young generation in the way for immigration. I think everybody heard about what happened in Italy in the last month. I am here today to ask for your support. We need the support of the United Nations and its member countries to stand with us in solidarity and take action to protect the women of Afghanistan. We need your help to provide emergency assistance to those in need, including food, medicine, and shelter. We need your help to ensure that women's rights are protected and that they are not forced to live under such an oppressive condition. I urge the United Nations to take decisive action against the Taliban regime and to impose sanctions against those responsible for human rights abuses. We need your support to ensure that women and girls are allowed and encouraged to participate in all aspects of life, including education, work, and governance. Afghanistan's women have suffered enough. It is time to international communities to take action and support them in their struggle for freedom and equality. We cannot afford to turn a blind eye to the atrocities against Afghanistan's women. We need your help to ensure their voices are heard and their rights are protected. I implore everyone, especially United Nations, to acknowledge the tireless effort and hardship endured by women in Middle East, particularly those in Iran and Afghanistan, and declare 2023 the year of women's freedom, education, and rights. I want to repeat it again this. I implore everyone, especially United Nations, to acknowledge the tireless effort and hardship endured by women in Middle East, especially and particularly those in Iran and Afghanistan, and declare 2023 the year of women's freedom, education, and rights. I appeal to governments worldwide to cease supporting the Taliban regime, terrorist group, and take a stringent measure against by any countries recognize them. At the end, I call all the United Nations to withdraw its endorsement on the Doha Agreement, which facilitated the resurgence of the Taliban regime that oppresses women, who constitute 50% of Afghanistan society. The United Nations must continue to support Afghanistan and women of Afghanistan. The Taliban must be recognized as a terrorist organization, and all forms of funding and financial aid must be classified as a terrorist financing. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Azra. Talking about enforced disappearances and child marriages that women and girls of Afghanistan are combating through. And recently, the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed and the Executive Director of UN Women, Sima Bahus, also completed a 4-day visit to Afghanistan, met with the de facto authorities, and according to the UNHCR, there are over 3.5 million Afghans displaced due to this conflict, and severely 80% of them are women and children. So just like you said, really time is up. We don't have any more time and patience to witness these and call for intergovernmental action-oriented goals from especially the United Nations. Moving on, so the brutal killing of Mahsa Jina Amini last September started a global movement, a strong demand for freedom in Iran. And within weeks, women life freedom hit the record on Twitter as being the most used hashtag in the history of Twitter. Iranian diaspora across the world, along with other nations' advocates, support of women's rights advocacy, participated in more than 150 cities. Protests took place in these locations, and since day one, even though the region's sensitive, complex historical settings are quite challenging to lead a sustainable change, I personally had my full trust in this eruption, because it's a women-led movement, a protest, which is strongly joined by after men as well, because the call for freedom to practice fundamental human rights is for everybody. It's a TikTok generation for liberty to live in dignity. But we all know that it's a very harsh truth, but in some particular regions, unfortunately, freedom has a high price, and now even the school children are paying that, as thousands were recently subjected to chemical attacks in school. So now we have Erika Sakar Kasri with us to inform us more about the situation in Iran through the lens of women human rights defenders. And her organization, Empower Women Media, is leading also great programs to empower these fearless women. And for our audience to learn more about Sakar Erika, she is the creative director and Persian Media Fellowship Coordinator of Empower Women Media. Fluent in both English and Farsi, she is an Iranian-born American and Middle East expert, human rights activist, and voice for vulnerable religious minorities, communities, especially women and children. And in recent years, Erika has been a Middle East advisor, policy building, and media consultant to prominent organizations, and senior member of the U.S. House of Representatives Armed Services Committee, organized and supervised congressionally hosted global conferences in Washington, D.C. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Cemre. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you all for being here and giving us the gift of your time. Again, my name is Zahra Kasrai. I'm a human rights activist, and I've knocked on many doors in the short career that I've had to anyone who would listen about what's happening inside Iran. And today, I want to tell you that Amir Ali Musa Kazemi, a 2-year-old boy, is the latest victim in the wave of murder since the unjust death of Mahsa Amini. The Islamic Republic fears even minor school children to the point that they've resorted to chemical gas poisonings targeting Iranian kids. Make no mistake, this regime is one of the coldest, most heartless, anti-human regimes in world history. It is desperate to impose hateful, fantastical, and permanent repression on everyone, but especially women. The regime of the Islamic Republic in Iran from its inception till today has always deprived its citizens from basic human rights in order to control the population. They began their suppression by targeting women. The first of many restrictions was preventing women from entering their workplace without hijab, and serial execution of writers and journalists. The terror regime simply is not the way Iran was before the Islamic Revolution. Iranian society was advanced, cosmopolitan, gender progressive, and among the nations that were Muslim, remained progressive center of learning and human rights. The mullah hijacking of my country in 1979 changed all that. The mullahs got power and took the money and power for themselves, and they abused anyone else who didn't agree with their ways. They restricted religious freedom and education and moved women to the Dark Ages. I experienced this with tens of millions of others. I was born in Iran, attended kindergarten with normal expectations. However, soon after that, girls had to dress and act differently at school. All the children had to learn chants of death to Israel and death to America. My family fled abroad, living for months as refugees and guests of kind, loving people devoted to human rights in Europe until we were allowed to come to the United States. So I've experienced in succession the previous Iran, today's terrorist Iran, and an affirming world that, in contrast to the regime, recognizes human rights and so reaps the rewards of humane policies. In my new home, I was delighted to be free and to attend school with no compulsory head covering or hateful chants, and I was even free to choose my own faith. I've eventually asked, what happened to the Iran that my family left behind? What went wrong? And I started following the democracy movement and its struggles against dictatorship and against corrupt traitors who support dictatorship and who enable the regime to continue killing human liberty and opportunity. As usual, this terror regime represses and hurts everyone, but often vulnerable, powerless women, children, and minorities the most. You cannot support human rights and also support the Iranian regime that violates people's rights at home, exports terror, weapons, and murder abroad. Removing Iran from the UN Commission on the Status of Women was a great first step, but more must be done to hold this regime accountable for its gross violations on human rights. Ever since the popular revolutions in the Muslim world in 2009, the people of Iran have publicly expressed their wish to be rid of this evil regime. In 2009, and then again in uprisings in 2018, and regularly today when the regime assaults and abuses people with cruelty, it was the brave women of Iran who rose to lead the first woman-led revolution, to show the world they will no longer tolerate abuse, even at the cost of their lives. The chants of woman life freedom, a rallying cry for women and men, which echoed from a small cemetery where Mahsa was laid to rest. The events this time since Mahsa's murder simply are the most forceful and obvious. We have countless examples of these violations of human rights that are widely accessible to anyone who is interested to know the truth. The regime arrested Niloufar Hamedi, a journalist who broke the story of Mahsa's murder, along with several prominent civil rights activists and human rights activists. The regime arrested anyone who had any history of political activism, such as Arash Sadeghi and Golrukh Irai. According to human rights groups, 61 journalists have been arrested since the murder of Mahsa Amini. Although numbers are likely higher, these are only the ones that have been able to be identified. We need to keep in mind that there is no such thing as freedom of press in Iran. Journalists cannot operate legally without getting government accreditation and are forced to operate under strict limitations. Despite severe censorship, the regime harasses and surveils journalists and their families. Journalists that are in jail are subject to torture and other human rights violations, included extended solitary confinement, denial of family visits, and denial of access to health care or legal counsel. Journalists and others are charged with crimes against national security and may only select an attorney from a government-approved list. Most journalists imprisoned are housed in Evin prison, which is notorious for subjecting inmates to torture, beatings, interrogations, and mock executions. Charges brought against journalists include waging war against God, struggling against the precepts of Islam, assembly and collusion against security, gathering classified information with the intent to harm national security. In fact, a recent law was introduced by the Majlis that anyone who reports a story without the blessing of the regime will face 10 years of prison, a 10-year prison sentence. Not only is there no freedom of press in Iran, there is no freedom of expression, conscience, or belief, and no one has the right to defend those who wish to have such freedom. Human rights defenders and lawyers are systematically persecuted, imprisoned, and tortured. Even foreign humanitarian workers are not immune to the evil of this regime, such as Belgian aid worker Olivier Van de Castile, who was arrested on a visit to Iran in February of 2022. He was sentenced in January to 40 years in prison for spying and 74 lashes. Dissidents and journalists based abroad face threats, and their families in Iran are interrogated and arbitrarily detained in a reprisal for their activism. Detained protesters face unspeakable sexual and physical assault in prisons. Over the course of 21 days, 23-year-old medical student Kayvan Samadi tells an exclusive CNN reporter that his only human contact was two interrogators who treated him to increasingly harsh regime of torture. They assailed him with insults. They beat him so violently that he vomited blood. He was flogged 42 times and he was molested. On the 16th day of his detention, having failed to extract a confession of him, Samadi's interrogators raped him with a baton. I could go on and on about the grotesque details of what goes on in the clandestine jails and government facilities of Iran to crush any dissent or any uprising, all in the name of God, but I will say a few of those details. No one really knows how many people have been arrested since the beginning of this revolution. Thousands indeed. According to human rights activists, at least 520 people have been killed in 26 provinces during 5 months of protests, including women, 60 women, and 70 children. Amidst the great protests for democratic change, the Iranian people are prime for freedom of conscience, belief, messaging, and training. Based on our research, it is paramount to offer human rights education through digital strategies, top-down and bottom-up. The good news is that Iranians are online all day long, looking for answers and support from the outside world. It was one tweet, after all, that brought the eyes of the world to Iran's women-led revolution. So we at Empower Women Media are providing them with digital content to advance human rights, freedom of belief, and conscience inside the country. Some of the examples of the work that we've done is develop international religious freedom advocacy videos. We broadcast series on satellite TV to millions in Iran. We're leading an international religious freedom training fellowship for women leaders. We're hosting an Iranian women's film festival this spring. We translate international religious freedom education tools into Farsi. And finally, I would love to invite you all to Morocco this June, where we'll be hosting a training conference for women from the Middle East. And this is just a short list of actions that we are planning for the coming year. Social science shows that when you hold women down, you hold down a whole society and its children and vulnerable. When you raise women up, you maximize freedom, but also stability, growth, and security. And revolutionary movements with huge women's participation are more successful in changing governments, but also protecting people's rights over time. Sarina Esmailzadeh is a bright and joyful 16-year-old blogger who was murdered by this evil regime for joining the revolution. And she once asked in her videos, what are the needs of a 16-year-old teenager? Giving love, receiving love, being in love. We are all in need of joy and recreation, good spirit, good vibes, good energy. And in order to have these, we need freedom. Thank you for your time and for this opportunity to speak to you guys. Thank you, Jen Ray. I want to share a short video, one of 4 films that we show to the women in our film series, and it's an online training course about the importance of religious freedom for women's empowerment.
There's a common misperception that women's rights to equality and freedom of religion and belief are clashing rights, but actually, they're inseparable and interrelated.
Research shows that there is a correlation between countries with high levels of religious oppression and extremely high levels of gender inequality.
Many countries allow religion to discriminate and control, especially women. It's painful to live in a society that uses religion or an ideology to restrict how you act or dress and limits the choices you make just because you're a woman. Women often fear of being punished or cut off from their family if they do something that their family might disapprove of.
As girls, my sisters and I weren't allowed to play sports. We were also not allowed to socialize outside of school with our friends. But as we moved forward in our journey in a more open society, it also opened the door for us to dream differently, to have access to more things, and also to be able to pursue our greatest potential. Women and girls from religious minorities are often the victims of double and even triple discrimination. They're often discriminated against not only by their majority culture, but even by their own male-dominated community.
Some people misunderstand freedom of religion or belief, thinking that it protects religion, and often conservative, patriarchal religion. And this can be an obstacle to gender equality. But freedom of religion or belief protects the individual, not religion, and this can be a pathway to women's empowerment.
Freedom of religion or belief allows for a woman to choose what she believes in and how she can live her life according to those beliefs. When that freedom is denied, there's a greater chance that her other rights, such as freedom of expression and freedom of speech, will also be violated.
Freedom of religion or belief can actually play a vital role in stopping harmful practices against women.
In an open, multi-faith society, individuals are encouraged to practice their faith in harmony with others and not impose their religious views on others.
Religious freedom means equal citizenship for men and women. It gives women options and allows their voices to be heard. Women have the equal right to practice their faith as they see fit.
A significant problem for women in some areas of the world is that they lack an education on religious freedom. Many of their leaders and media don't inform them about their freedom of belief or conscience. Many women don't even know about their own rights under their nation's constitutional laws.
Freedom of belief and conscience is important because it allows the individual to form their own ideas and their identities and then to be able to express them. In high school, my sisters and I became captains of the basketball team. Sports became this outlet of freedom, this space away from my father's cultural values and restrictions. It also helped me to form this pathway where I could dream and think differently outside of the restrictions of my home.
Freedom of belief is about being free to explore who you are, to realize that you are no less than a man, and you have the right to search and find answers without fear of violence or backlash from your family or the government.
Women are the backbone of both family and society. When women have the freedom to believe what they want to believe, they create new possibilities for what the future can look like. Freedom of belief allows them to start thinking for themselves. That enriches the world around them.
Thank you so much, Erica. And I have participated at many different occasions of the Empower Women media. They're leading a tremendously important work, especially to empower women, human rights defenders in their own languages. That is very, very important because for us, in different parts of the world, language barrier might be a serious issue. So I highly recommend everyone to check their Empower programs taking place in different languages. So moving on with our program, now we're gonna hear more from Myanmar's situation, and the human rights standing in Myanmar was not in a good shape already, but 2017 genocide of Rohingya and the 2021 military coup created an even further crackdown in particularly women's rights and girls' empowerment, their well-being. Widespread atrocity crimes committed under the so-called clearance operations from 2016 to 17. UN Security Council recently passed a resolution on Myanmar, and the Secretary General's Special Envoy, his report is due on March 15 next week. So even if the intergovernmental interventions may be falling behind our expected schedule, we still see some progress. So next we have now Seher with us to inform our audience on the forms of violations that women human rights defenders are combating under these widespread atrocities. I would appreciate if you could please share your policy suggestions, best practices. And currently she is the political initiative and advocacy team leader of the Women's League of Burma. And besides serving in many other civil society organizations, she is also a regional council member of the Asia Pacific Women Law and Development, and served at the advisory board of Urgent Action Fund, the Asia Pacific. Since 2008, now has advocated for human rights, women's rights, justice, accountability, and ended the system of impunity for the past decades. She has also advocated for ethnic equality and self-determination, has taken part in the political processes within the Karen states as well, as a part of national, regional, and international engagements. The floor is yours.
Firstly, thank you so much for this opportunity, and then thank you very much to the JWF. So this is first time that we have met and engaged. So I'm really honored to be here, and also thank you all of our distinguished who are here for your time. So today, before I'm going to share the situation, especially focuses on women human rights defender. I would like to share of our organization called Women's Legal Burma, established on the 1999. So we have the aim to increase the participation of women in the struggle for federal democracy and also human rights, promoting women's participation in the national peace and reconciliation process, and also enhance the role of the women of the Burma at a national and international level. The WLB, we call Women's Legal Burma, is made up of 12 women's organizations represented women from different ethnic, religions, and a cultural background. Collectively, the WLB work for advancement of the status of women and peaceful, just as Federal Democratic Union of Burma. So here's our distinguished. You may already aware of the Burma background a little bit, so some of them may not aware of it. So I just want to brief a little bit of the Burma conflict situation briefly. So we have been facing an experience of the civil war. It's already over 7 decades, and also we also have, as I mentioned before, we also have many diverse groups. When the conflict happened in the ethnic of Karen or Rohingya or Chin or Shan state, so that we have seen clearly that the military, we call military junta, has used the weapon, the rape and sexual violence as a weapon. So we have been collected and see from the news that sexual violence case and a rape case and happened and mentioned in the news. So this is the Women's Legal Burma has been collected and also raised the voice to the international community to take action, especially to end the impunity and also to have the justice and accountability. So this is briefly of the Burma content that focuses on the women's issues. So since the actually Burma has been experienced 3 times of the military coup. So this time is it happened in 2021 February, and that in the last 2 times, so there's not much women and women human rights defender standard and against the military. But since 2021, 60% of the pro-democracy human rights defender are, and 70 to 80, we have seen the women are leading in the front line and also evolve in the many different roles to against the military and to take the part of the resistance movement. And that we have so many women have been from the different, so some are from the religion, some are from the ethnic, so some are from the they are 5 months long time, so they are now standing very bravely and against and also stand for the justice and accountability. So according to the AAPP record, we have seen 3,111 were killed, so includes 391 women were killed. And that also includes children were killed during the conflict as well. So there were more than 300 children also were killed within the conflict. And that also we have 60,380 detained in the jail and in detention. So there were more than 3,148 women were detained. And that we also have more than 4,000 women who were arrested, not in detail yet. So, and also we have more than 500 children also were arrested. So this is a record and a document till March 7th. And that we also seize and collect the information that more than 100 having a death penalty includes 11 women sentenced to death. So this is the current situation that the people from Burma faces, include the women. So women are in the very dangerous and also very insecure area and places at the moment. We have them to take risks because of they also need to be part of the this resistance movement. To some of them, they take responsibility to help it IDP. We have more than 1.5 million of IDP across the country. So most of the women they are also becoming IDP, and within the IDPs also they take part to help it, to serve it, to give the service and assist of the humanitarian aid and also assist of the women's needs in the refugee or IDP camp. And also we also have a women's organization that take in different roles. Some of them they take in advocacy to the national, regional, and international level to raise up the voice of the women faces the challenge. And also some of them they are involved in the armed groups and to resist the military hometown. So when they face the threat or when they face the offenses of the military hometown. And also they are involved in the political platforms. And also they are involved in the strikes, and they are involved in the other service to support or assist of the women's survivor or victor that faces the GBV and the sexual conflict-related sexual violence. So as a Women's League of Burma, we have 12 members of the members. So we collect the case that over 100 GBV and also includes rape case by the military junta. So all those things are also we have other women's group also have we collected those GBV and also sexual violence in the conflict situation as well. And that as a women's groups also we also raise all of the women's human rights defender security concern and also their safety concern to the many different platform of the stakeholder in the ASEAN or in the United Nations as well. So all those things we would like to internationally to priority the women peace and security agenda, because this is a really need in the Burma context to address the issue and address the challenges and protect or promote or relieve and recover all the violation that women and girls has been faced. So this is one of our call and a priority and a push into the United Nations and the international community. And also we always call for the our solidarity and also the stakeholder to reject military coup. And also we, as a women's group and a women human rights defender, we are not fighting for fighting to end military dictatorship, but also we are fighting to end patriarchy systems. So in the Burma content, so we are very influential of the men and also stereotype and discrimination because of we are women, so we can even be part of the polity and be a front lights so many years. But this time, so we want to end off all this to end discrimination and also stereotype and patriarchy systems in the Burma. So that's why we fight for the patriarchy, to end the patriarchy system includes any of dictatorship. So this is also, we keep our resilience and a commitment to keep fighting on that. So we, in the last 2021, we organized a campaign we called Surround Flight Campaign. So we made up the flight with the surround. So and that it means that the women are equal to the men. They take care responsible the same to the men. So we have been very success of our campaign, but we still keep it going to fight for that. So last, we want to request us to call for our distinguished colleagues here, and also to stand with us for the justice and accountability, and also we would like to have your solidarity for Burma content to have women protection or women protection mechanisms, and also we are trying to advocate to international to UN Security Council to refer the military junta to the International Criminal Court because we have them. They are committed genocide to the Rohingya, and they committed crime against humanity. They committed the war crime. So they should be in the international court to face and reach the international justice and accountability. And also we call to impose comprehensive global armed embargo. And also we call for impose coordinate and targeted section. And also we call for support the local rights and the women human rights defender who provided humanitarian aid, and also who are provided for the women human rights defender safety and security. And also we call for support our advocacy to end the system of impunity for all forms of violence against women and girls, include conflict-related sexual violence, and also sexual assault and sexual harassment in court. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the talk. So, following the MENA region very closely, and now we heard from Global South as well in detail. And as I have been reporting and monitoring on systemic state-led atrocities, I can easily say that educated women, empowered girls are the biggest threats against the gender apartheid regimes, authoritarian states. And listening to different country cases, we are able to observe that such states are embracing very similar strategies, tactics against women human rights defenders. And dictators are playing well in their clubs, joining hand in hand for their regional, global, political priorities. So we have to do better than them. We have to stand in solidarity with each other, advocate for the other causes as well, apart from our own ones, which are more dear to our heart. But in this global world, with the pace of global engagements, really we cannot turn a blind eye on what's going on in different parts of the world, because sliding back from democracy happens quite quickly. So now I want to open the floor for any reflections, questions. We have some good time for a Q&A run. If you could please share your remarks, solidarities, questions for our esteemed panelists here, I would really welcome any feedbacks, questions. Anybody breaking the ice? Please, if you could introduce yourself as well.
Yes, hello, my name is Cheryl McNamara and I am with Kairos Canada. A big thanks to all of the speakers. That was quite powerful. Thank you for sharing your stories. My question is for Erica with regards to Iran. And you mentioned the digital space and using the digital space to educate, to help with the resistance. I'm also wondering about what the state is doing to counter that? Often you hear states will have very regressive policies when it comes to the digital space. So I'm just wondering how the activists in Iran are negotiating or working with that. Thank you.
That's a really good question. Thank you. Actually, Iranians are very tech savvy, and they have learned how to bypass the government restrictions by using VPNs. And as you know, Elon Musk just was able to get regulations, U.S. sanctioned regulations lifted so that we can get Starlink sent into the countries to certain provinces. A lot of actually Chinese hackers share their VPNs with Iranians, which is really interesting to me. But also personally, we know many Iranian business people and IT people who have sent in or who buy massive number of VPNs and share them with activists. So, years and years of repression has taught the Iranian people how to bypass those restrictions.
My name is Lucy and I'm Palestinian. Actually, my questions to the first mayor. We talked about different stories which is really impacted us as not only women, as a human beings. And I feel that we can find all of these stories in everyone, but in different shape or in different cases. My questions, actually, I would address this to you about being the first mayor, and we talked about the patriarchal structure. Are you elected or appointed, and what was the hindrance and obstacles, and how you get through it?
Thank you so much for your question. When I returned to Iran as a refugee, I was a refugee in Iran, and then when after 2020, after 2000, and it's like 9/11 is happened, so I came back to Afghanistan because we was full of hope and energy to start and rebuild Afghanistan. So when I go back, and at that time, the government of Afghanistan doesn't have a stable economy, so they cannot make an election. So in many space, like mayors, governors, all of them, it was appointed. So at that time, I appointed as a first female mayor, but this appointed, it wasn't very easy. I have to work, I have to recognize myself as a person who is very powerful. And then I can be a mayor in the patriotic system. So even when they appointed me as a mayor, after the government stayed after 2.5 months, they didn't announce to the public that they appointed a mayor. When I went to the Nili, it is far from the center of far from the capital of Afghanistan, and then I came back to ask for the government to support me as economic, because this city, it was the first, it was started very new, and then this municipality was the first municipality in this part of the Afghanistan. So I need some financial supporting. But when I come back to Kabul and ask them for government, please give me some support, financial support, even you can borrow me, and then I can, after I make it some project and then make it revenue, I can give back to the government. At that time, the government asked me, the big question is, first, you as a woman, are you sure you want to stay as a mayor or not? We are not sure you are enough confident to stay as a mayor. So first you have to prove yourself. And then when I give them 100% ensure I am, when I said I want to be a mayor, so I will continue. What happened, doesn't matter what happened after that. So after this, they announced we appointed a first female mayor in Afghanistan. Even they didn't give me any financial support.
Well, with your remarks, we once again understood the importance of gender-sensitive budgeting, and indeed, one of my favorite human rights terms is political will and meaningful participation of women human rights defenders, because increase of numbers for women decision makers to lead more political, social arenas is a plus, yes, but we also have to combat such gender-related barriers to be meaningfully active in these platforms. Yes.
My name is Nair, and I am from Canada. And my question is for you. I grew up in Pakistan, and I'm a bit aware of the history of Afghanistan. At one time, long before feminists started to talk about women's participation in politics, Afghanistan already had a constitution where women could be parliamentarian. I also remember the time when there was a big, huge conference in Kabul, and social activists came from all over the world and had this conference talking about the hegemony of more powerful countries as well as people. And it was a place where activism was really flourishing. I want you to tell me what happened, how did that change, what geopolitical dynamics have created Talibans and given them the power to bring down all those wonderful progressive strategies and impose all kind of horrible things on Afghan people and Afghan women.
Thank you so much. It is a very powerful question. I hope I can give you a good answer. What happened? The Taliban is come back again. Even before. You know, the Afghanistan is a country. It is like a geopolitical country. It is connected east, west, center, all the Asia together. So that's why the conflict in Afghanistan, it is not only internal, it is international. So any countries who find a benefit in Afghanistan and in the Asia, they come into Afghanistan and they support the terrorists, even include our neighbors. So the problem in Afghanistan is the Taliban is not created by one night. They created in decades. And unfortunately now still this creation, it is continues with bring the children to the madrasas. They turned and they educate them as a terrorist. And what can you imagine after 10 years, 15 years, and 20 years, all these 5, 10, or even 15 years boys, what gonna be in future? So another radicalist, another fundamental, and another terrorist in Afghanistan. But the problem is, we need all international support to ban all these things in Afghanistan. Not only only people of Afghanistan cannot do anything by themselves, because this created by the internationals and all others around us. I hope I could give you a good answer.
Yes, please, at the very back.
Hello, my name is Carmen Capriles. I would like to share. I come from Bolivia, the other side of the planet, and I would like to share with you the experience that we had in Latin America around what is now called the Escazú Agreement. The Escazú Agreement came from UNEA, the Environmental Assembly, and it's an agreement based on Principle 10 of the Rio Declaration 2092, the basis of sustainable development: access to information, access to participation, and access to justice. In that agreement, there has been a lot of killings in Latin America to activists, environmental activists. And unfortunately, the stories of women have not been told, because those end up like passionate crimes or things like that. So those stories don't make it to the Guardian or to the other newspapers. But there have been activists that have been killed for protecting the monarch butterfly, for example. And with this treaty, we have been able to put the eyes of multilateralists on this problem, that is the importance of the lives of human rights defenders, and especially, well, for the region of Latin America, environmental activists, because natural resources that are trying to be protected for next generations. And I think it's important to keep on fighting. So we have a definition of human rights defenders. We have a definition of women human rights defender, and we need international cooperation and a lot of political will from those countries that can do something in order to change it. But yeah, it is a fight. We're all in, and we have to keep on pushing for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your additional reflection to the panel. Yes, please.